Right. Hello, welcome this morning to How to Fest. This is Dr. Jessie Rose, creatrix of Moon and Wheel, and I'm here as part of the Athens Public Library How to Fest to talk to you about tarot card reading. Now, I have a lovely slideshow that I may not be able to access because I just spent some time trying to set it up and I don't think it's going to happen. But as you come in, please say hello, let me know that you're here. Any questions that you brought with you, go ahead and pop them in the chat. And if you can't hear me or see me, please let me know that as well. I'm going to try to see if I can get those slides up because it definitely wasn't working with the preview. And it looks like it just won't. So I will look at them and I will still talk to you about them, but you won't get to see them today. I'm sorry. Unless I can, yeah, I can't futz that around. So this is mostly a broadcast, but it is live. And so if you have questions about tarot, please pop them in the chat. I'm very curious to know who's here. This event with the library was a live event in person, but because of the virus and everything, it was rescheduled to be online. So the intention is to make sure I answer your questions and give to you whatever information is most helpful in helping you access the mysterious tarot cards because they're really fun. And what I know is that a lot of people have misunderstandings about what the cards actually are. People always think it's about fortune telling, and a lot of people read that way. But especially as decks have become more popular, and there have been a lot of oracle cards as well that have come out into the world, people have become more curious about what tarot is, how does it work, and that's what I want to talk with you about today. So I wanted to mention that it's really a playful technology for gaining a new perspective. And if you see my eyes darting, it's because I'm looking at my slideshow, and I'm just going to move my camera a little bit. No, I'm not. Okay, so think of the tarot, it's cards, but think of it as an unbound book, a picture book, and you can shuffle and deal it into infinite combinations of visual cues that spark creative, improvisational storytelling. And that storytelling is really helpful to gain a fresh perspective on past experiences, to access inner knowing about present realities, and to reclaim creative power to shape future outcomes. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is actually four things: the structure of the cards, the symbols, interpretation, and reading. Because if you have those four components, then you actually can pick up and read the cards without having to memorize every card meaning, read a bunch of books, which of course I love books. You're here with the library, you probably love books too. But I first got a deck when I was 14 years old, and it came with a little white book with lots of meanings, and it was very intimidating. I thought that I was going to have to memorize everything. I thought it was going to take, it just seemed overwhelming, and it might have for you as well. But what I learned over 30 years of working with the cards and playing with the cards is that it really is an art. And if you know a little bit about how it's comprised and what to look for, you can develop your own relationship with the cards themselves. And they basically start talking to you in the sense of evoking associations. So I'm going to share with you about the structure of the deck. The tarot deck has 78 cards that is broken into two sets, what they call the major arcana, which are the trumps that are archetypes of the experience of being human on a journey. Joseph Campbell talked about the hero's journey as a monomyth, a story form that cuts across time and space in different cultures. And we're very familiar with it through the Star Wars epic and universe, and many stories tend to have the same kinds of elements that pop up, and so that is in the 22 cards of the major arcana. And then the remainder of the deck, there are 56 cards that are very similar to what we know as playing cards: four suits and court cards, aces through court cards. But the suits are slightly different. So where playing cards have hearts and cups and clubs and spades, the tarot deck has I'm not going to say them in the same order, maybe. Cups. So hearts are cups. I said cups for playing cards. I meant diamonds. Diamonds are coins or pentacles or discs. The spades are swords. And the clubs are rods. So some people say that playing cards actually derived from these earlier symbols. The history of tarot is very mysterious, and it's not really known. But there are a lot of theories. I'm not going to go into those today. What I will say is that those playing card portion of the tarot deck is called the minor arcana. It's about the everyday life stuff. So we have the major arcana are the big secrets. Arcana means secrets. And that has to do with our journey as that's the universal part that humans go through, that all societies have aspects of archetypes that are sort of a primal thing that we can recognize. And then the minor arcana, the little secrets, are more of the day-to-day life stuff. So between those two parts of the deck, there's already some meaning layered in. When you see a card and you recognize, oh, this is from a major arcana, like, I'll try to grab one right here, like the Sun, or this is from the minor arcana, it's the Queen of Swords, but she's a court card. Here's the Ten of Cups. So we know that these are more everyday life issues, and we know that this is maybe a deeper aspect of our human existence and reflecting on issues that might have more to do with greater purpose or calling, or what people often frame as the spiritual aspect of life as opposed to daily living, the mundane. So once we know that there is a structure to tarot, that's a starting point to learn and start to recognize. And I always tell my students to take cards and just lay them out and put them in order so that you can see. And I really want to show you my slide. So I am going to try to bring my screen, even though I can't just flip it. I'm going to bring the screen over here and see if I can get it into the camera view. Anyway, this is what happens when we go live. We have experiments, but that's a beautiful thing in reading the cards as well. It's always different, and it's not an exact science. Oh, good. Okay, so I can give you some of this. I can show you. Here we have the major arcana cards, 22 of them, and the minor arcana cards. And here we have that there are 4 suits to the deck. Just a second with the cord here. All right, look at what happens when we just get creative. And then we have the 4 suits. We talked about the coins, swords, cups, and the rods. Then down here on the bottom, the court cards. And these are just examples, but each suit has a set of court cards. And one of the things that's different about the court cards is that in a playing card deck, usually we have a knight, queen, and king. But in tarot, we also have a page. And these images, and I know these are really small, but I encourage you to get a deck and take a look at it for yourself. These images start to inspire imagination because there are so many symbols laid throughout the deck. And that's what I wanted to talk with you about next. So I have this lovely little outline that isn't showing exactly here, but we're on now, moving to symbols. So we just got a little overview of the structure. I want to talk to you about the symbols and why symbols are the key, really, to unlocking the deck and making sense of it and reading it for yourself. So a symbol is something that stands for something else. You probably have familiarity in your life already with symbols that are meaningful to you. And I'm trained as a sociologist, and in sociology we have an entire school of thought known as symbolic interactionism, which says that humans don't live in the physical environment directly. We live in a symbolic world, and we call it culture. But basically, all the things that we know and all the meanings that we hold come through a process of social interaction, interacting with each other. We learn from our parents, we learn in schools, other institutions, we learn through book reading, presentations like this, but even language itself, it's all symbols. The alphabet, each letter is a symbol, all the words are symbols, and everything that we look at, even this computer screen, symbolizes something. In a way, it can be like a doorway, or it can be, many people don't like working with computers. It'd be really uncomfortable. People don't like PowerPoint slides. That is a subjective meaning that we basically impose on the external world. Now, I know this is a little heady, and so I'm not going to go too deep into the sociology of it, but there is scientific support for why a tool like visual images on a deck of cards can be useful for us to gain deeper understanding or reflection or insight. And so how we define what's going on is based on what we know people expect from us, what we expect from others. Everything we do is imbued with symbolism. And as we are making our way through the world and trying to make sense of things, we're doing so by interpreting and making sense of the symbols around us. And we do that from our own vocabulary of symbols. So, for example, if you look at these icons, which are symbols, this is a really basic way of thinking about what a symbol is just a little visual representation. Some of these may be familiar to you. Many of them may not. It really depends on your experience so far. And as you go through life and have experiences, or as you learn more, you gain a wider understanding of symbols. And even symbols that are already familiar may gain deeper layers of meaning. So for example, the plane symbol or the bicycle symbol, these are symbols of travel, symbols of movement in the world. But in a time of pandemic, they may also have associations of longing, like, boy, I sure wish I could go on my vacation, or having my bicycle has been the one wonderful thing to get me out in the world while everything was closed and we were staying distant. So those kinds of meanings then can be layered in. I want to give you another example that's super, super easy to make sense of, even if you don't have a previous understanding of emojis. What's so effective about them as symbols is that they're immediately recognizable. You don't have to learn. No one has to formally teach you what these different symbols mean. So especially if you take, laughing until you're rolling on the floor and crying, or, I don't know about that. Oh, what? They're visceral, and they evoke a sense of knowing just by seeing them. And that is really helpful when you think about these cards contain so much rich visual symbolism, and many, many books have been written, but you don't have to go and memorize the books. You can actually see and interpret the symbols for yourself. The trick is knowing that that's how these cards are designed, and then knowing what to look for that you can then start to talk about as you give a reading. So I want to speak to you a little about interpretation. Metaphors are a kind of symbol. It's a figure of speech. It's a way of describing things that isn't literally true. And this is also a crucial key to understanding tarot, because think about those emojis we just looked at. Nobody has a round yellow face. And that's part of what's so powerful about them, is that anyone can relate to them, in part because they are not specific. They don't look exactly like you. They look like an abstract, vague, kind of metaphorical version of a person. And in the tarot, all the symbols, all the characters, all the archetypes, all the scenes, what's happening between characters, the objects, the animals, the plants, everything in the imagery can be taken as metaphorical, representing something that isn't literally true, but helps to explain something or enable a comparison. So when we say, an example here in the slide, the assignment was a breeze. Well, we know the assignment wasn't an actual breeze, but we think about the experience of a breeze. It's kind of refreshing, it's light, all the associations. It came and it went. It was no big deal. That's a lot of meaning in a very simple sentence because it's symbolic and metaphorical. So here are the 4 aces for the 4 suits, and I've overlaid them with the elements that they're associated with. Now this is where knowledge of other symbol systems comes in handy, and you can peel layer after layer of the onion in a tarot deck, and there's probably more symbolic references in the deck than any single person could learn in their entire lifetime, which is both impressive and also kind of a relief, because not only do you not have to memorize them, you couldn't if you tried. So it's not really about memorizing so much as developing a practice of relating. So here, the 4 suits, and I said at the beginning, like playing cards, we've got our diamonds, the coins, our hearts, cups, our spades, swords, and clubs, which are the rods. Those are also actually representative of 4 elements from early Western civilization, and in the Eastern, they talk about 5 elements. A missing 5th element often is spirit, and you could think of the major arcana as the spirit element of those higher order archetypes. But what we know is that each of these elements that are associated with these 4 different suits have other associations. So here on the other side are astrological associations. Fire is excited and moving and active, and you think of trailblazing, blazing. It's a metaphor. A blazing fire. Fire can also be the fire of a candle. It can be warming. It can be, it can destroy even, but it can also nourish, and we cook food with fire. And so when you're investigating your deck, and you lay out all the different sections and looking at the cards together, thinking about other associations, you start going into deeper worlds at whatever level you are ready to or comfortable with, and with whatever experience you bring from life so far into making sense of what you see on the cards. So for each of these, knowing that in the minor arcana, and that also in the majors, these symbols of water and fire and earth and air, which show up in the pictures of, let me see if I can just show you, okay, here. So here's the moon, and in the moon card, there's water, there's earth, there's air, there's fire in the light of the moon. All the elements are in here, and any of those could be a doorway in. Hi, Mary. Thanks for saying hi. I did say at the beginning when folks show up, this is live, so please do feel free to say hello, let me know you're here, and post questions either about tarot or if you want me to pull cards for you, because we're going to do that in about 10 minutes. I'm happy to demonstrate for you and show you about reading. But yeah, so just, I can see the chat as I'm doing this. So, what was I saying? Oh, the whole point here is interpretation is an art. There isn't an exact way to interpret everything. There isn't a correct answer to what a card means or what a series of cards mean. And one of the things people often say is they'll show a picture of the cards. What does this reading mean? The cards themselves aren't the reading. We read the cards but we can read them in lots of different ways. Just like we can read that icon of an airplane as it's time for me to take my trip, or I am not currently able to travel. Those are two totally different meanings of an airplane. This is a different way of thinking than a lot of people are used to. It's also part of why tarot is a good self-development tool, because it offers opportunity to experiment with, practice, and develop skills at wider forms of thinking and deeper forms of thinking than you might get an opportunity to do in other parts of life. So what I'm getting at here is that the cards themselves are full of metaphors. Every symbol is to be understood metaphorically. It's not really a queen. It's what does a queen represent? What is the energy of queen? A queen is feminine. A queen is sovereign. A queen is on a throne. She's got a crown. She may be rich. She may be a ruler. She might be under the thumb of a king. She might be looking for a king. She might be an inner queen. She might be an aspect of your highest feminine self. Any of those metaphors go connect to other ideas in your mind. So the metaphor of a queen connects to other ideas, and then the next idea becomes a metaphor. If I say a queen is a feminine, sovereign character, then what does feminine sovereignty connect with? So here's an example of a queen card from, this is the Morgan Greer deck. And she's holding that coin in her lap. And she's looking off into the distance, and we see the oak leaves behind her, and they're brown. So it's like fall and harvest, and the mountain in the distance, and the yellow sky. It's like warm glow of evening. Everything here strikes me as like a fall or evening point in life. She's a mature, sovereign, feminine being. And in your life or the person you're reading for, those may have very, very important connections. They may remind somebody of their mother or grandmother or something that they're going through. So I see a couple more comments here. Cheryl Ann, thank you for the comment that it's a great presentation. Taryn, my English major brain is realizing this right up my alley. Absolutely. I started as, I wanted to be an English major in college. I started as a creative writing major. I quickly discovered that that was not a strong career path, and I also wouldn't have been able to learn as many different things as I wanted. So I went in and did liberal arts and made up my own degree as an undergrad with creative writing, philosophy, psychology, anthropology, women's studies, political science, and then I went to graduate school, and I did get an MA and a PhD from Ohio State in sociology. I studied the sociology of identity, emotions, social change, social movements. And so transformation and symbolic interaction and symbolism just really speak to my heart. They're big passions of mine. And I think they have a lot of value and power for helping individuals, organizations, and maybe even the entire planet become more self-reflective, creative in thinking, and open to possibilities and new connections. So I know I've thrown a lot at you so far, and not everybody is as nerdy as I am. You really don't have to recognize all the symbols. You don't have to be able to look at a card and know all the potential symbols that are in there. What helps, though, is to know just enough to get started. One, that there are symbols, that the structure itself carries symbolism, and that once that structure gives you, if you know the structure, that gives you a foundation. So for example, here's another queen. So we know she's a court card. She's also got a rod. She's Queen of Rods, and she has a sunflower. And there's a lot of yellow in here. Yellow seems associated with all those elements with the element of fire. So knowing to look for those things gives you a starting point and a place to talk about something. And so this list here of colors, patterns, context, and frame of the picture, for example, this one and the other queen I just showed you, they're looking straight, basically straight at the camera. And in this deck, all of the queens are. But let's see if I can give you another picture here. I'm just kind of running through the deck. Here's one where the frame and the context is more like we're looking at someone who's walking away and there's something happening off in the distance. And so where this card that I just showed you is like a portrait, it's almost like she's posing for a portrait. This one is a little bit more like we've just caught a scene, maybe even an intimate moment. This person's looking away, maybe they don't even want to be seen. It's a very different context and frame on what's in there. I talked a little bit about landscape and plants. Sometimes there are characters engaged in some sort of action, and that action might be relevant to the story. Here's one, Seven of Swords, that's walking off, carrying something similar to the one we just saw, character looking off. Their body language is fairly similar, but this card's, the Five of Cups, is not moving, just really sort of inwardly focused, whereas this one is hurrying off. And so what does that associate in our minds that we might have to say as we read these cards? So the objects, the cups guy was just sort of among the cups, and the swords guy is taking some of them somewhere. So his stance towards the objects is very different. Here's another example with the cups. So we have the Five of Cups, where the three are spilled and this red liquid, it could be wine, it could be blood, it could be Easter egg food coloring dye. We don't know, but we can make up whatever we want to as we tell a story that makes it meaningful in the context of the reading, which we'll get to in a moment. But in this picture with the Five of Cups, the character is aware that three have spilled, and there are two that are behind this character that are just not really in that person's awareness. They're behind this person. Whereas this one with the Four of Cups, there are three standing there and one that's being offered. So the stance in relation to the objects gives you something to say. And then animals and celestials. I use the word celestials to refer to the moon, the sun, the stars, angels. Those are the main celestial imagery that's in the card, but even some things that evoke aspects of the celestial that may not be directly in the card. This, for me, always seems very Holy Spirit, cup runneth over, and it's got this lotus, this peaceful, flowing, abundantly good feeling, and the glow. It's like this aura glow in there. So the point here, though, is that as soon as you have enough of a sense of what you're looking for, you can start. And the only way to actually learn how to read the cards is to do it, is to practice. I have, in the course that I teach on how to read tarot cards, I've given a art journaling technique and an art journal to help people work through and start. So this is how I learned initially when I was 14, and everything was just overwhelming. I thought, I'm going to draw the pictures and I'm going to color them. And it really draws your eye into the different symbolism and kind of meditatively accessing your own internal associations. So this is the final key, and I know we're here at 11:29. I'm going to stay on. I hope you can stay with me. But reading itself, and I just want to quickly mention that the cards are not the reading. The story that the cards inspire you to tell to yourself or others, that's the reading. And stories are so important to us as people. I think we all know that. We're here on a library, how to, we love books. But what I want to say about story is that if you understand the basic three-act structure of a story, it has a beginning that sets things up, a confrontation in the middle that makes it worth paying attention to, and some sort of resolution that happens in Act 3. This structure, basic structure, goes all the way back to ancient Greece of the three-act structure, allows us to change when we do our reading. The reading goes from one point in the beginning to the point at the end because of something that happens along the way. That's the journey of the story, and it's why a basic three-card reading is so powerful. Past, present, future. Many people think it's about predicting your future. and telling you what will happen. But the future doesn't exist yet. And a story has to have a future in order for it to be a good story. It doesn't mean necessarily the future in the world out there so much as the future that the past we've talked about and the present that has come from that past, the future that is possible through the transformation that the story challenges invite the hero of the journey to engage with. Let me say that in simpler language. When I read for someone, I pull 3 cards every time I start that way. Here's card 1, the past, what happened that led you into this moment and this thought. So I'll pull a card and say, here's one. This isn't even random. All my cards are face up on my desk. But here's the 3 of Cups. And I might say, you came out today because it seemed like a fun way to spend a morning and be with others and enjoy things that you like. There's fruit on the table. These seem like friends connecting, and they're all looking out, maybe at a 4th person. They're an audience. They're learning something maybe in this moment, in this presentation. And then in the present, here, again, not random, but a great example of another card I haven't shown you yet. We see this couple outside of a window, stained glass window, and there's a bandage on the head and on the arm, and the figure in the foreground has a rod in their hand, and the rods we know are action. This one is stuck. A lot of times people come for a reading, or people turn to cards themselves because they don't know what to do yet next. And the cards can help unlock that stuckness when we tell a story from what we see. And so partially here, they're outside of a place that can be a sanctuary. It's very reminiscent of a church window, and that there is comfort for everyone who's struggling. And so this idea that tools exist to serve as medicine, to help us move from where we're at to where we want to be. So where we want to be. So I might pull this card for the future. Here's a 3. Now this is similar to the one we just looked at with the stained glass window, only in this case, we have a figure who is working on building the structure or decorating it. They're chiseling into the wall. This one is a 3. It's very early in the number system. Right? It goes from 1 to 10. Say a 3 is an earlier number. 0, 1, 2, 3, not too far along. So it's building and designing something beautiful, something helpful that still has a long way to go. So I would say from that learning tarot is a practice, and it can go into the future. There's always more to learn and develop. And if you're just starting out on that journey, practicing your craft is the best way to get better at it. I mean, that kind of stands to reason. But with tarot, that doesn't necessarily mean reading books. It means actually playing with the cards themselves. So I'm going to turn back to the camera. I'm going to check and see if there are more comments. I can't really see the comment flow. Love the sunflower crown is the last comment that I see here from Mary. So if you are here and you have questions, I would love to answer them, either about anything I shared, or if you want me to pull a few cards for you and do a little reading for you, I'm happy to do that as well. So I'm going to give you a moment, gather my cards, and see if any comments pop up. And of course, it's fine if you don't have questions. If you were just curious and you came today because you wanted to see what this was all about at all. When I got tarot cards more than 30 years ago, very few people knew what they were, and there weren't a whole lot of decks to choose from. And now there are themed tarot decks for all kinds of things. You can get dragon tarot and cat tarot and unicorn tarot. I like to stay very close to what became the most popular tarot, was the Rider-Waite deck, based on the Marseille deck. Because I find that some of the newer decks that are themed remove symbolism that's actually pretty helpful. And even this Morgan Greer is a bit of a reduction from the Rider-Waite. I'll give you an example while I'm waiting for any questions to pop up. But I do like the art of the Morgan Greer. I find it more beautiful. Maybe that Three of Pentacles card, if I can find it. So I'm not seeing comments. Oh, hold on a second. That's me, Queen of Rods. How many different decks of cards do you own, and what drew you to get them in particular? This is Becca. I'm intrigued by all the different art interpretations out there. Yes, so I have owned more different decks in the past than I do now. I stopped collecting them for a few reasons. I mean, and one is financially, it could get very expensive. But the other is I wanted to go deeper into a specific deck, and I still find, even while I was preparing slides for this, I started noticing symbols I hadn't seen, and I've been doing this for 30 years. So it might be that the symbol just wasn't meaningful to me at an earlier time in life, and then it did become more meaningful. It might be that I've been working with a color version of the deck, and I was looking at images that were in black and white, and it made it more contrast. Intrigued by all the different art interpretations. The art is, some of them not so great, but some of the art of tarot is just, it's a really, many artists have found it's a good challenge to do the cards because they have a particular structure and layout. So there's a constraint, like, okay, I'm going to do a set of tarot cards. That means I have to do each one of these major arcana cards. So now you know what you're going to paint or draw or create with collage or whatever your medium is, which is a lot more helpful than staring at a blank canvas. So I've thought about that myself. Cheryl Ann says, I have karma cards. I've never used them yet. The tarot cards seem very nice, maybe easier. So the karma cards are probably an oracle deck. And I talked at the beginning about structure. And that's a difference between an oracle deck and a tarot deck. Oracle cards don't generally have a structure. They're just a bunch of cards. Each one stands alone. But the tarot deck, the cards stand within a structure. And because it has that structure, it's almost like it's a code that if you laid it out linearly, you would see a particular thing. And if you laid it out linearly in a different order, you would also see a particular thing. And there are teachers who do this, who say, put the cards in this order and notice this story that's always there when you put them in this order. But then when you shuffle them and randomize them and pull only a few of them, you have the possibility to create an infinite number of stories that have an underlying structure, that have a foundation to them. And oracle cards don't really do that. A lot of people think oracle cards are easier because you don't have to learn so much. But I agree with you. I think that there's a support to giving a reading that comes with the tarot format and the way that it was designed. And Cheryl Ann, do you do online readings, not local? Yes, so I have a local studio, but I also have a website, which is moonandwheel.com. You can also book readings through my Facebook page on the Book Now button. And I have a course that's coming up. If you're interested, message me so that I can send you the info, because that invitation page is not up yet, but that is going to be starting in June. And I would love to give folks who caught me here on the How To Fest a savings coupon for that if you're interested. Karen says, what an awesome presentation. Thank you. I wish I had seen these as I was going along. I started to get nervous. I didn't think people were into it, but y'all are still here and I see these comments. Cheryl, love a reading. About to leave in 15 minutes. Okay, so I don't know if you're still on here, but like I said, it's 11:40. I planned to stay until noon, so I don't see questions yet in the chat, but go ahead and pop them in. And I'm still looking for this card so that I can show you the contrast between the way some of the decks treat the symbolism. In many cases, it's very much the same. But, oh, here's a good example of one. Here's a good example of one. Okay, so I showed that three of coins, three of pentacles. This, and by the way, the image of the pentacle, some people don't know, but it represents the elements. The four elements we talked about, the fire, earth, and air, and water, and then the fifth element of spirit. And there's a medicinal relationship there that goes back to Western civilization, alchemy before chemistry, and also in Eastern medicine, the five elements theory is behind traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And so there's a lot of meaning in here that at first glance you might not catch. But here we have this three that I had worked with, and then here's a different one. Here you see, so the art really changed from the Rider-Waite to the Morgan Greer, where it's more like a close-up on the worker here. And this one, okay, I see Karen's question, and I'm going to read that question. And Edna, I see you said I'd love a pull. Edna, if you've got a question, pop one in, but otherwise I'll just pull a card for you and talk about it. So this Rider-Waite version has the worker actually turning and looking and to talk to, it looks like there's a friar, a monk, and then a hooded figure here. Not really sure with the plans. Maybe this is the architect. Maybe this is the one who's designed the building and wants to make sure that the worker is getting the job done right. So here we have that worker hard at work. But not all the cards are reduced like that. Some of them are just a straight up different artistic representation of all the same symbols. I'm gonna come here. So while I'm looking for the next card pair, I'd like to show you to complete that thought. Karen's question is for a card pull. Because of COVID, my job structure is changing. What minefields do I need to avoid? Wow. So Karen, I'm first of all sorry to hear that. And second, I think you are definitely not alone. And not just locally in this area, but that is something that is happening all over the country and is a big deal. And that if I share for you, can also be helpful for other people. All right, I just wanted to show this. This is another reduction. This Five of Wands from Morgan Greer is beautiful, and it does capture the essence, but it helps to know this card when reading here, because this one is very mysterious. All these arms of different figures, kind of with the sticks all knocking together or coming together. I mean, are they forming a secret society and swearing an oath of allegiance, or what are they doing? But here you see that they're all young and they're perhaps play fighting, just like kids do with Nerf guns out in the yard. They're just knocking those sticks together. As a five, it's also like a learning how to use your power card. So it does help to look at different decks and see how the cards are represented, and then you start to build up your own internal associations to be able to read into these metaphorical story sparks. Really, they're like writing prompts, but they're for storytelling rather than, I mean, you can use them for writing, people do, but a reading is generally a telling. Okay. And Sherilyn, I'd love a pull too. I called it a reading early. I guess it's a pull. You know, so a lot of people read online and they go and they do live streams and they're like, you know, drop your name in the thing and let me know if you want me to pull a card for you. And they do a one card reading. And I can do that, and that's fine, and it keeps it short because 3 cards is kind of a lot. So when it's quick like this, right, somebody got to jump. This card jumped out, the Hierophant. Now, Hierophant is a major arcana card, and it is representative of a spiritual leader in a formal way, in a formal, organized way. You see those keys at the bottom and this hand gesture and this staff and crown of authority in a building, this archway behind, and a lot of red that's sort of indicative of fire and trailblazing. But this is like when you are following a path of learning. And so I'm going to speak from this card for Karen, because the job structure changing, I don't know if your job is with the university, but I'm going to use this as an example. People work in a university, especially if they're faculty, especially if they are tenure track faculty or adjunct to that path. They're in an institution where there are degrees and hoops to jump through and initiations basically to go in. And so I said religious order, it's really any, I don't want to use the word secret society, but a society that requires qualification to get entrance. It's not just something anybody can join. You have to do things to be allowed. You have to earn your keys, and someone else in authority basically bestows upon you the right to do the next level of whatever it is. So people in academia, and I stepped off the academic path many years ago. I loved teaching, but I knew that mostly what people were competing for were research jobs, and I didn't want to do that. So, and I didn't want to be an adjunct because they're not paid well at all for what they do. However, having gone through those steps, finding how to transfer those skills from one setting, which has a very clear path and entry points and validations and all of that, into a whole other world that has its own rules of who is allowed to do what and what your qualifications are and gatekeepers. Okay, so this card to me right now is about the gatekeeper. And that gatekeeper is external, but remember, as a major arcana card, this is an archetypal energy. So it's not necessarily about a human gatekeeper, like who's going to give you a job, so much as it is, what's your internal gatekeeper? What have you already determined is your worth or your skill and where you belong? And for a lot of people in academia now, they're being forced out. You didn't say you were, so you might not be. But this, I think, holds for any work. If you have trained or had the experience of one type of work and one world of work, and then you're out of it, it's easier when you choose to be out, but only a little because it's really hard. So it's way harder if you are cast out of it, if you are let go, if you're told you don't have a place here anymore, and you don't have a place and you don't know how to enter a different world. There's the external gatekeeper of the people who have jobs or are hiring or could give you a job or refer you to a job. But there's the internal gatekeeper, and this is where you have power, is what are the rules you have already established internally around what you're good at, what you could do, would do, what you'll allow yourself to do, what you want to do, how your skills are useful or valued in the world. And in the theme of this overall presentation, are there ways that you can expand your awareness and take what you have to bring it somewhere else? People talk about, transferable skills. What are your transferable skills? And so spending some time with that, and your question originally was, what minefields do I need to avoid? The minefield of thinking that what you have and do and can offer isn't valuable to anyone, or that nobody wants you or can recognize what you have to bring to the table. Because the challenge is, and here's another minefield, the challenge is you have to do it first to translate what you've done into what else you could do because of that. And some of that is the parts you enjoyed and would enjoy. Some of that is the skills that you picked up along the way, things you've done in one environment that have, it's almost like, think of them metaphorically. Avoid the minefield that because you've served on committees in academia, I'm just making this one up too, that only really relates to an academic world. Serving on committees doesn't exist in the corporate world, but other things like managing a project and bringing a team together and facilitating meetings, that happens there. So finding the language translations to take what you've done metaphorically in one place, connect it to its, I want to use the word analog, but what that means is like the analogy of what it is. And so the minefield would be thinking that you're only good for the environment that you've been in versus everything from that environment prepared you very well to bring a unique perspective to another place. All right, pausing there. Edna wants a card. Just gonna grab a card for Edna. Oh, Edna, you got the Empress. This is another major arcana card. And the Empress, look at how beautiful she is. She is holding this shield with an eagle. She's got her foot on the crescent moon. There's a lotus in her arm, the heart of passion, waterfall in the background. It's just sort of gently flowing. Beautiful trees. It's like she's in a garden, and there's also this wheat down here. And so some of these references are to different goddesses like Demeter or Aphrodite and the Queen of Heaven. But she's also, just in general, sort of this fertile, feminine archetype, metaphor of the feminine as soft, the feminine as luxuriating. And she's got all this green. That's a lot of earth vibe there. Even though there's water and there's air, it's the green is the predominant color in this card. A little bit of yellow, but she's got that fire is right here in the red in the shield. Now I'm using color as the symbol a lot here, right? But that freedom is a protection. That energy of trailblazing fire, it's here symbolically on the shield and in this brooch representing the heart. So she's sort of a master of those energies. She's not an embodiment of it. She's an embodiment of that earth energy of being grounded, being solid, being nurtured and nurturing. And then this in her arm here, the lotus and the wheat. Oh, I'm sorry, this is cattails. Is it cattails down there too? I suppose it would be next to the water. So I said that about Demeter, but cattails. Cattails. Thinking about cats rolling around on the ground and how cats are very, even if they go in the air, when they connect with the ground again, it's so soft and complete and almost magnetic and very graceful. And I also see down here by her foot, I think there is a pomegranate down there. So again, a little bit of red. It's like the fire of life, the action, it's all accessible to her, but she's not in it. She's resting. So that's my card for you, Edna. And Cheryl Ann. Okay, we just have about 7 minutes, so I think this will be the last card. I'm so happy you guys jumped on here with me today and were patient enough with my technical difficulties. I'm going to slide this since it's sort of in the camera, because that's got my website, moonandwheel.com. That's me. This little picture, by the way, that's from the library when they set up the moon backdrop. And that, I love that. And I use that picture. I don't know, for some reason I got a great happy picture on that one. And I like that picture of myself. And I like that it's at the library. And I'm so glad the library is opening and slowly. So, let's see. This card is for Cheryl Ann. Okay, Cheryl Ann, you got another archetypal major arcana card. You got the Hanged Man. Now, some of the cards in the deck, I didn't talk about this yet, but some of them might immediately be a little jarring or to some people even disturbing because tarot has the light and the dark in it. It's not all love and light and just uplifting. Oracle cards are often for purely like getting you a positive mindset, but tarot is for allowing you to integrate and go a little deeper and find the harmony with the light and the dark. Now this isn't one of the darkest cards, but it's a little like, what is going on? He's hanging upside down. He's got a rope on his foot. And the word hanged, it sounds violent, but he doesn't look like he's in pain. He sort of looks like he's meditating. It helps if I turn him around. You see him, he's really kind of peaceful there. And he's in this interesting posture, almost like he's doing yoga, right? So this is suspended, and all of the wood all of the rod's energy is he's not actually touching it. It is supporting him. And I'm saying him, but it's not necessarily a him. Even though there's gender in the cards, I like to think of that at the more metaphorical level, like the essence of what we have defined over time as masculine and feminine, visually depicted in male or female characters. But this person is complete unto themselves. This person is in a resting position, but there's also discipline here, because they're if you were to imagine your body in this posture and in this position, even just standing up, if this person were standing foot on the ground, that would be pretty difficult to maintain. But then add to it hanging from a rope on one ankle. There's a physical discipline and strengthening, and there's resting, not acting, and it's hard, but there's a purpose to it. And this card also associates with some of the mythology around Odin and the Tree of Life suspending himself to receive the runes for the people, the alphabet for the Nordic people. And so one of the potential purposes of such discipline is to receive a vision of how to help the people, of something that you can bring through you into the world. But it isn't time yet. You're not in action and you don't have the vision. And so you might have glimpses of it, and those glimpses may even drive you to do whatever the work is to really receive the fullness of that vision so that you can bring it through and into the physical world. But it's still the time to do whatever it takes to create a state of receptivity and to develop the muscles to hold that vision. Okay, so we're coming up here on time. I do see a couple of other folks. Taryn says, thanks. This has been interesting. Thanks for sharing. Becca says, thank you so much. I learned a lot. I'm going to follow your page and check out your website. Excellent. And I do have a course that I'm launching June 5th. It's going to start, and I'd love to share information. Anybody who wants info about that, if you want to send me a little message, or I can post a link too on these comments just so you can look at it when you're ready if you want. Preet said, when will my husband come forward for reconciliation, take me back home, and what are my marriage future? And Kamaljit said, hi there, can I know when I would get married? Okay, and so I see too these prayer hands and crying emojis, and that need and that feel of desperation and desire to know, like, how do I get through this? So many people come for tarot readings to professional readers in that state. And so I didn't speak about ethics, but it's so important for anyone who does read for others to recognize the vulnerability that some people are in. And Preet, I feel for you, and I want you to know that my approach to these cards, and I really think it is an important way to understand them, is that I can't predict your future. I can help you create your future, which is far more important, because you have the power to move forward in a way that is going to be good for you. And so this question, when will my husband come forward? When, it keeps you in a state of it not happening. And if you can reframe that into, what can I do until that happens? How can I take action or decide without waiting on that anymore? Because the waiting is miserable. I can feel that from you. So Preet, I'm going to pull a card for you about where to focus your attention while you are waiting for this thing that is so desperately wanted in your heart. So the card that I got is the King of Swords. And the immediate impression I had was of someone masculine. And in this case, I'm thinking that this could represent the husband, either himself or your view of him as being very hard right now, being very closed off. See how that sword is just like right in front, decisive and out in front. Don't even try to engage. So that's my message to you. Don't try to rush it. There's nothing that you can actively do to change his mind. This is swords. This is the mental and the thoughts. He's pretty set. Doesn't mean he's set forever. But in this moment, right now, he's, so you got to focus on you. And I get my major arcana. We're at noon, so I know that we're ending. This card is judgment. And it does have reference to the notion of judgment day, like resurrection, and these bodies like rising from the grave, and a horn and trumpet of judgment in the sky, and there's fire in the sky, and it can be kind of scary, but it's also beautiful and wonderful because it represents new life, new life. You have the power to focus on wherever the new life is for you, without waiting on him. Where are the threads of new life for you? So look for that. Look for the seeds of new life. And I hope that that helps you. And I will keep you in my heart and thoughts and prayers, and that things go well for you. Everyone who's here, thank you so much for joining. And I'm going to sign off now. But I always sign off. I say I love you, because I do. And I will see you soon. Thanks.